Well, it's Wednesday morning. I apologize. I'm coming at you a little bit later than I typically would. I was in Dallas, in Arlington, in Fort Worth, and all the places that were covered in black and orange on Sunday and Monday. It was a fun place to be. It was a sight to behold. Seeing the Bengals in a late game bind and actually getting a bounce go their way. Except, I take a little issue with that. You're in the jungle. I'm Matt Edwards. Thank you for joining me. We're going to talk about a few different things here. We're going to talk about that Monday night game just a tad. I know on Wednesday it's kind of already done and over with, but I do want to get into it. I've got some quick hits, including how Zac Taylor maybe dodged a bit of a bullet on Monday night. And we're going to start with Joe Burrow's comments after the win. But before we get to that, all I heard yesterday was, hey, it's finally time the Bengals got a little luck. It's finally time the Bengals got a block punt go into the other team's hands before bouncing to Muma. Let's go back 2 plays before that. Do we remember Joe Burrow nearly getting his head ripped off from a face mask that was not called? You're going to tell me about a little bit of luck? No, that was not a little bit of luck, as I adjust the camera here for you guys watching on YouTube. That was not a little bit of luck. That was ball don't lie. That's what that was. That was ball don't lie. The Bengals end up in a 2nd and 20 after a sack when Joe Burrow nearly gets decapitated. And then that's ball don't lie. That's all that is. They should have right there got a 15-yarder for a first down, been up and, nearly at midfield there. That's ball don't lie, baby. Don't let anyone tell you that was it lucky? Sure. Was it also terribly unlucky to miss an incredibly egregious call 2 plays before? Yeah, it's called karma. It balances out. The Bengals deserve to win that game. Don't let anyone tell you. I had the guy on the flight home behind me saying, well, yeah, it all came down to 1 play. Well, A, it didn't. It never does. I know that sometimes, well, actually, that's not true. It does come down to 1 play, but people had plenty of opportunities before, always to win the game. But that's just that. Don't let anyone tell you that was a lucky Bengals win. And even if it was, guess what? That's the first time the Bengals have been lucky all season. If you're on a lucky barometer, the Bengals are not on the right side of it. Let's get into it a little bit. So Joe Burrow, after the game, his comments immediately take over the storyline of the night. If you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan, if you follow the team, if you cover the team, his exact quote is this. Joe Burrow, after the game, says, "I'm confident we're going to be able to do what it takes to get T back," referring to Tee Higgins. "I know that I'm going to do what it takes to get him back." So, T didn't have a big game. I think 2 catches for 23 yards. I don't really even know the conversation in the locker room that led to this, but it's kind of been assumed all year, right? Tee Higgins playing on the franchise tag this year, making 22, 23 million, somewhere right in there. It's kind of been the assumption all year, you're going to have to pay Jamar this offseason, that you couldn't pay T and Jamar. Or not so much that you couldn't, but rather that the Bengals wouldn't pay T and Jamar. And I've been here, if you listen to this show, I've been fine with them not paying Tee Higgins. The reason being, he doesn't play as much as you would like him to play. More on that in just a second. But let's start with this. It can be done, right? There's some people who think, and it's easy to think this way, that you can't pay Jamar Chase. He will become the highest paid receiver in the history of the sport. So he's going to get paid, and you got to pay Tee Higgins as well. It can be done. They're doing it in Philadelphia right now. They've got a highly paid quarterback and 2 highly paid receivers. They're doing it in Miami right now. Same situation. Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Tua Tagovailoa. The Bengals can do it. People smarter than me say it can be done. I'm pretty bad at math, but I've read enough and listened to enough people. The Bengals have the salary cap space to sign both Tee Higgins and Jamar Chase. That's not an issue. My issue, here's where I think the Bengals run into trouble. And will run into trouble. And really, they're already in this kind of trouble right now. If you sign T to a big deal and you sign Jamar to the biggest deal, you damn well better start nailing a lot of draft picks. You damn well better become the best drafting team in the National Football League, because you're going to have to get those guys on rookie contracts to come in and be contributors. No more projects, right? No more Myles Murphy. We'll see where he's at in year 2 or 3, and he looked okay. We'll have more on that later too. No more. We need immediate guys. The Bengals need guys who immediately can come in and contribute within the first half of the season. And if that means you take a guy who you think has a lower ceiling, so be it. You got to get guys on rookie contracts who can contribute and make this team a playoff contender. Not what we're seeing right now, but guys who can come in and make this team a contender down the stretch. How you do that, I don't know. We see NFL teams do it all the time. You look at the Kansas City Chiefs 2022 draft class, they had like 5 rookie starters. They got Isaiah Pacheco. We all know him. They got him in the 7th round. They got Trent McDuffie like 25th overall. George Karlaftis, I think 30th overall. The guys are there. The guys are there where the Bengals will be drafting moving forward. Can they figure out a way to identify those guys and make them successful on the field? Because the last few years, and if you need to go back to last week's episode or whenever it was, Friday's episode, and listen, I went through the draft picks, the last 7 defensive draft picks in the first 3 days. None of them looking good right now. You can call it injuries, you can call it whatever you want, but the fact of the matter is they have not nailed one of those guys recently. They will have to start doing that if they pay T big and if they pay Jamar big, which they're going to do certainly one of those things. So, figure it out. I mean, it's if Joe wants it, and I love Joe coming out and saying this, by the way. Joe, we've said this, right? I think any reasonable Bengals fan wants Joe Burrow to grab this organization by the horn, say, hey, we're not playing this, wimp ball. We're done with that. You wanted me, you got me. You gave me the big money, we did it. We're here to win. Joe's legacy, he cares about a whole lot. Joe winning football games means everything to him. It's why he's as great as he is. He's a competitor, right? He wants to win. He's not going to be afraid to say what needs said. He's got his money. He's doing good. You all saw his house on Tuesday. He's doing all right. He's got the Batmobile. He's got the model staying at his house as an employee. He's doing just fine. He's going to start doing what needs to be done, and good for him, not wasting any time. Some guys in the NFL wait till they're in their, they either say this kind of stuff before they have the aura to say this kind of stuff and before they have the clout to say this kind of stuff, or they wait until they're in their 30s, and by that time, they only got a few years left in the league anyways. Good on Burrow. He sees this. That's why, again and again, I trust as long as he's at the helm, this is the guy who's going to get it done in Cincinnati and bring a Lombardi trophy to Cincinnati, Ohio. Okay. So there's that. There's reason 1. You got to nail the draft picks. No more punters in round 5, round 6, whatever it was. You need to hit on guys who are quality starters by year 2. And then the other thing that I've talked about a million times, my concern with Tee Higgins is not his play on the field. He's obviously an excellent teammate. He's a top 12, top 10, 15 receiver in the league. But if you've got that money tied up in him, the rest of your receivers are going to be one of two things. They're going to be on rookie contracts, which we just talked about, or they're going to be on, they're going to be veterans who, once the Bengals get hot, and we saw this a little bit after 2021, they're going to be guys who want to come and play in Cincinnati. We see this, the Bengals will be that team eventually with Joe Burrow at the helm. So you're going to have to get one of two things. You're going to have to get cheap guys at the receiver position. Now, you've got Jamar Chase, which automatically makes you a top 10 receiving room in the NFL. But what I'm getting at here, and I mentioned this a second ago, if Tee Higgins gets hurt, which he's got hurt a lot, I think he's played about 70% of the snaps in this system since he entered the league, and at times that's dipped down when he misses, 3-4 game stretches. You better figure out, do whatever Joe Burrow did this offseason, packing on the muscle to get bigger, to get stronger, because playing this 11 to 12 games a year, you don't want to do that for a receiver you're probably going to be paying $25, $30 million to annually. So those are the two things you got to figure out if you're going to pay Tee Higgins. These are the reasons when you say, well, why wouldn't you pay Tee Higgins big money? Those are the two. A, the Bengals haven't drafted well recently, and you got to draft well when you're putting out big money to a handful of different players. You got to get guys on rookie contracts who can contribute, because you need there's some positions, right? We know that interior offensive line. We know the defense. There's a lot. I don't have to go through them. There's a lot of position groups on this team that need to be better. And if you're paying these guys big money, you're going to have to do that through the draft. You can get some guys here and there in free agency, and I'm not saying they can't pay anyone other than these 3 guys. They can and they will, but it doesn't all come down to Tee Higgins. But I'm saying if you're paying Tee Higgins $25, $30 million a year, that's probably going to take away other couple positions you can sign in free agency. So you better hit on your draft picks. And then secondly, you got to figure out a way. Whatever the training staff did, whatever Joe Burrow did this offseason, and I know as a receiver you can't really pack on the weight like that, or you'll slow down a little bit, figure something out. It's 2024. We're way too far advanced. We got robotic dogs protecting the president. We can't figure out how to keep a guy from having a hamstring issue twice a year. Figure it out. Those two things have to happen. And I'd love to see him back. I've kind of had to defend that from time to time because, I've said, I don't know. Do you give that kind of money to a receiver who only plays 10 or 12 games a year when you've already got the best receiver in the league? I've thought that Tee Higgins was a guy who, if you're a team that just can't seem to get it right at receiver, then you take a flyer on Tee Higgins. And it's not even a flyer. It's just he might miss 3 or 4 games a year. And you better hope they're not big ones. So if you're a team, who's a good example? There's so many good receivers in the league right now, too. That's the point my friend Jed DeMusi was making. It seems like every receiver recently that goes in the first round is hitting. And sometimes even in the second. I mean, T's a second-round pick, 33rd overall, so the first guy in the second round. But it seems like so many receivers are hitting. Do you pay money? There's so many good receivers. Do you pay the big money to 2 receivers? Obviously, Jamar is a generational talent. He's on pace to be one of the greatest of all time. He's already the most talented we've seen in Cincinnati, and we've seen some talent in Cincinnati. So there's good arguments both ways. I'll say that. The Bengals are in a great position. You re-sign them, you've got the best receiving duo in the league. You don't. We're in an era right now where drafting receivers seems to be easier than ever. And oh, by the way, you've got a quarterback who can take a 6th-round rookie out of Princeton and turn him into a number 3 receiver who is legit as well. So there's that. That's my piece on Tee Higgins. I'd love to see him back. But also, if they don't, there are other avenues. At any rate, you got to start hitting on some draft picks because this roster is not going to get any cheaper, and you got to have better than what they've had on the field this year, right? You've got to have better than that secondary. You got to have better than that defensive line. You got to have better than that pass rush. You got to have better than that interior O-line. And you're not going to be able to go out and sign Karras and Kappa again when you're paying 2 receivers $25 million plus a year. Moving on. Let's see. What do I want to get into next? Went to Dallas. I was in Dallas Sunday through Tuesday, so got back yesterday, kind of late afternoon. Interesting place. You got to move around a lot because it's like Dallas, Arlington, Fort Worth. You wouldn't go to Arlington unless you were going to a Rangers or a Cowboys game. But Fort Worth is cool, kind of the old-timey West, and then Dallas is more obviously the downtown area. Black and orange all over Dealey Plaza. Always interesting. Let's go to where a president was assassinated in my Vontaze Burfict jersey. Not me, other people. I don't own a Vontaze Burfict jersey, but you get what I'm saying. Always interesting to me in those places of sorrow and American tragedy to see people walking around in their knockoff DH Gate wrong color orange jerseys. Anyways, the Bengals are at 5-8. So, look. I mentioned a minute ago, I'm bad at math. But I don't believe that they're at like a 3 or 4% chance. I outlined this last week, or at least the path to the playoffs. I just don't believe they're at a 3 or 4% chance. Like, the Broncos still have the Colts. They still have the Chargers. They still have the Chiefs, who might have something to play for in Week 18. And by the way, they still have the Bengals. If the Bengals can win these next 2 and get a game below 500, like, it's basically Bengals-Broncos. Like, if they can win that game, they will be 9-8 with a tiebreaker over Denver. Again, I'm not saying their chances should be 60%, even 50 or 40%, but 3 or 4%? I need someone to explain the math to me on that. I got to think they're at like a 15. I guess they're just basing it on they don't think the Bengals will win. I don't know, though, because the Bengals are favored pretty often. I don't get it. I'll say that. Math sucks. We all hate math. I'm getting rid of math. I'm saying the Bengals have like a 12% chance, even better than that, because I think they win the next 2. Everyone thinks they're going to beat Tennessee and Cleveland. I'm going to put it, so like the New York Times and NFL.com, they say the Bengals have like a 3 or 4% chance. I am worse at math than them. I understand that. I am worse at math than computers. But I do know more about football than them. And I have seen more chaos in them because I am older than playoff generators created by AI. I got to think the Bengals have like a 15% chance. Do what you want. You can take the New York Times or the NFL.com percentages, or you can take mine and say 15%. Does it really matter? We'll figure it out in the end. I just got to think if they end up at 9-8, and I know some people don't want to hear this. I know the season's been disappointing, but I still love the idea of them possibly having a shot at the 7 seed. Because Joe Burrow wants to find out what these guys are made of down the stretch, who you can depend on. You want to find out? Well, week 17, you get a game against Denver that's for potentially a playoff spot. Week 18, you got to go to Pittsburgh and win. You'll find out real quick. You'll find out real quick who are the guys you can depend on in pressure situations. All right, let's get into the quick hits from Dallas. So Bengals are going to win these next two, right? Tennessee and Cleveland. And if they don't, they don't. But I just got to think that 3 or 4% does not seem right to me. I know the Colts are in the mix. I know the Dolphins are in the mix. I don't know. Do what you want. Does it really matter? Let's just have fun. I mean, winning was fun on Monday night, right? Seeing Jamar Chase go for 14 catches and 177 yards and 2 touchdowns was fun on Monday night. That's why we're here, right? Seeing that ball deflect off Cam Taylor-Britt into Geno Stone's arms, 2 guys who have struggled mightily this season, that was fun. Let's have more of that. Muma Jongmeta, our preseason hero, giving up a punt block to former Bengal Nick Vigil and then going down and recovering it. That was fun. More fun. Less numbers. We don't need numbers. You think when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl in 81, your grandpa is sitting there saying, well, the Bengals have a 16% chance to get the 2 seed? No, they didn't know any of that stuff. They read the paper in the morning and then ignored things for the rest of the day because they had to work a 14-hour shift. Who cares about the percentages? Have fun. We got to quit getting sucked into all this stuff so much. I say as I talk about the Bengals on a podcast on YouTube, which you need to watch either on your phone, computer, or tablet. At any rate, some quick hits from Dallas. Joseph Osai, I said before, or in that bye week, I said there's a few guys who, if they can step up, could help the Bengals make a playoff push. Now, of course, they come out and lose to Pittsburgh. But Joseph Osai had 2 sacks in 2 games. He's now got 3 sacks in 3 games. Are they figuring him out? I guess is my question. Is he figuring it out? Getting him, this is something we talk about. It connects back to the top. He's a guy who the hopes were so high for coming out of Texas, even though he was a 3rd-round pick. If he can kind of develop here toward the end of the year and they can get him back on a team-friendly contract, that could be really big. So, I mean, we talk about the draft. There's a lot of avenues to go through to get guys who can be contributors on this team. If they can get him back, a familiar system, a guy who's well-liked around the locker room, if he can continue this trajectory, be a late bloomer, that would be huge. I don't know if they figured out where to, how to use him better, what it is, but he's really seemed to come on the last couple weeks. And also the same thing about Myles Murphy. I was at the game Monday night, obviously. It just seemed like he was getting pressure a lot. Not maybe as well as you want him to, but it seemed like he was pushing the guy who was blocking him backward every time I would look at him. Now, he doesn't turn that into sacks, but it helps. It creates chaos, right? And that's what you look for on the defensive line. So I know, I saw something, I don't know if it was PFF or what, didn't grade well. I don't know. Again, your grandpa didn't say, well, Tim Krumrie didn't grade well on PFF this week. He's moving guys around. I know that much. And for this team and this pass rush, that's a hell of a lot better than most of what we've seen so far. Now he needs to take that next step. He needs to get off that guy. He needs to get off his block, slap at the ball, do something. We've seen pops from him, right? We've seen some pops at the end of last year where he looked, I don't know, maybe he's not 100% this year. We know he was hurt in the preseason, missed the first month. We've seen some pops for him. He seems to be back. Can he kind of put it together? So there's 2 guys right there. We know this team needs more pass rush help. Joseph Osai, Myles Murphy, can you get it going down the stretch here? Can you stay healthy going into 2025? Can you continue on this ascension and be pieces that this team needs? Those are the kind of things. Those are the kind of little breaks you need to get when you're in the position the Bengals are in, paying a lot of your top guys big money in order to make a push. And then at the end of 2025 or 2026 or whatever, maybe they go somewhere else and get a big contract because the Bengals can't afford everyone. We've seen that happen with other teams. What you got to get is you got to find that little window where they are excellent but not killing your salary cap, and you win a Super Bowl with them. Simple as that, right? Easy peasy. Another quick hit. I said this. I've been saying this way too much. We got to get more Burrow barking at the refs. Not even barking, just saying, hey, man, I got my freaking head nearly ripped off. I was looking at my shoulder blade on that sack, and everyone in the world saw it. Troy Aikman, Joe Buck, Zac Taylor going nuts. Can you help me out a little bit here? I would like to not walk around headless through the streets of Dallas tonight. I mean, you got to get in their ear a little bit. I don't know what else, or do something. I don't care what it is. You got to do something so that you don't get just bullied every week like this. You got to stand up for yourself, brother. I mean, and we saw another one where someone, it wasn't Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons, by the way, was pretty awesome. I saw at least like 3 times he could have put a late shot on Joe. And maybe I'm just so used to TJ Watt and Roquan Smith that I'm used to guys, taking their little cheap shots where they can, that a guy acting normal like Micah Parsons seems nice. But, Joe's got to do some more. Joe's got to do some more when it comes to saying, hey, help me out here. They nearly tore my head off. Because it's not... I get it. I get wanting to be tough. I grew up in the same part of the country, in the same corner of the state as Joe Burrow. I get that when you grow up down there, you don't whine and complain. You're tough. You tough it out. You do what it takes. You line up and play the next play. At some point, you got to do what the other greats do and take every edge you can get. I'm not saying flip out like Patrick Mahomes does. I'm not saying ask for the flag before the whistle's over. What I am saying is you got to do something to protect yourself and help your team out. If Joe gets every other, he's all about being the best he can be. This is another way he can do it. I know he doesn't love the optics of it, but it works. It's an unfortunate. Don't hate the player, hate the game. And then finally, winning fixes everything, right? Like, it's not like all the Bengals' problems weren't there on Monday night. Like, the defense obviously played better. Yeah, they played Cooper Rush. Go look at the games. I mean, the games they've lost outside of Jacoby Brissett, they're always playing a very good quarterback, right? They've lost 8 games this year, 7 of them, 2 to Lamar. Russell Wilson had his best game ever against him. You had Justin Herbert. You had Patrick Mahomes. There's 5. You had Jaden Daniels when he was great. And you had Jalen Hurts when he was starting off his little MVP stretch there. Like, 7 of the 8 Bengals losses came against really good quarterbacks and a couple guys who were in Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels, who were playing the height of the football they have played this year. So again, not making excuses. There's a ton of good quarterbacks in the NFL, but when the Bengals have played quarterbacks, this is what they've done all year, held them to 17, held them to 20. Winning fixes everything, though. There were still some problems. Tackling still wasn't great. The secondary still wasn't great. But when you win, things help. Zac Taylor probably dodged the bullet on Monday night. We've all been all over Lou Anarumo. Had the Bengals lost to a team, let's say that the Bengals get that punt off. Thank God they didn't. Thank God the Bengals had a punt get blocked. Not a sentence I'd ever thought I'd say. They go down there. They got a field goal kicker who can hit from 60. Let's say the Bengals lose that game 23-20. The conversation shifts a whole lot. We've been on Lou Anarumo all year, right? Because the Bengals give up 40 every stinking week. If it comes out this week and the Bengals score only 20 and only allow 23, who's going to take the fall? It's going to be Zac Taylor. So this team, we know this Bengals team is just too talented to lose to Mike McCarthy and Cooper Rush. Simple as that. So Zac Taylor, good for him. I know he's wanted it. Watched Hard Knocks last night. You can tell this is eating him up. You can tell he hates this. He's kept his composure. Good for him, because if the Bengals don't win that game, boy, does his seat get a whole lot hotter. Needed a bonehead special teams play away from that seat, getting real warm real quick. So, all right, hopefully you can't hear my heater that just kicked on. Forgot to close that door. That happens. Part of life. Deal with it. But happy to have the heat, man. Didn't need it very much in Dallas. Very nice down there. Anyways, so that's that. We're pretty much done. I didn't even write anything else down after that. Zac Taylor's seat getting really hot. I was tired coming back from Dallas. I had to sit next to a guy on the plane who sniffled the whole time. Be a grown-up. Blow your nose, please, for the love of God. Bengals get Tennessee on Sunday, and then they get Cleveland. They kind of dodge that bullet of having the 3 games in 10 days with the Cleveland game getting flexed. And, go from there. Win 2 straight. You're at 7-8. It'll be interesting to see how, Brian Callahan, obviously in Tennessee, so kind of a little storyline there to go with. Joe Burrow's house got broken into. I kind of hinted that earlier in the show. I don't have a lot to say about that other than that sucks. That's very unfortunate, but I feel like it's such a big story. I want to at least acknowledge that I'm aware of what's going on. So hopefully that doesn't, impact too much, because that's a scary thing, right? Go win 2 straight and go from there. Kind of rooting against the Broncos right now, rooting against the Colts and the Dolphins. And let's see where we're at here. Let's go in this one. Thanks for hanging around with me. So the Chargers are, who do the Chargers have here? We went over the Broncos. The Chargers at 8-5 and just lost. They've got Tampa Bay, who's not bad. They've got Denver, so that one's kind of, you almost have to root for them because that's the one that got flexed into the Bengals spot. That's the Thursday nighter. But the Bengals just kind of need the Chargers to win out since the Chargers beat them. That's the thing, man. That's one right now. If you got that one back, even if you lost to Pittsburgh, which they obviously did, if you had that one back, because the Chargers in with New England and Vegas, so they're getting to 10 wins minimum. So let's not even worry about that. There's one spot left. Denver, Indy, the stinking Dolphins are all in front of the Bengals. It's going to be, so maybe my 15% was too high. Maybe that was too high. Oh, well, we'll see. I'm going to keep watching. If you don't want to, don't do it. Come back to this podcast. I'll tell you what's up. Because even the Colts, the Colts schedule, that's the thing. It's like for every, the Colts and Broncos play each other this week. So like if the Colts just have Tennessee, the Giants, and the Jaguars as their final three. So even if they lose, they're still going to get to 9-8. I don't know what the tiebreaker would be. I'm not going to go through that right now. But yeah. The Bengals win out, they've got a shot. Simple as that, which is all you can ask for. Well, you can ask for a lot more than that. But I love the idea, and I know people are probably listening and saying, oh, they'd be the 7 seed and they suck on defense. They lose 42-40. Maybe, but you're playing with house money. I love the idea of going into Baltimore or Pittsburgh, Kansas City, probably not Kansas City, Buffalo, wherever it is, and having a chance to play spoiler. And if this team gets confident, look out. Maybe I'm being a little too optimistic. Maybe I'm being a lot of optimistic. Dolphins don't have an easy stretch here either. They've got Houston this week, San Francisco, Cleveland, but that Cleveland, I mentioned this, Cleveland and the Jets back-to-back on the road. They're not good in the cold, so we'll see. We'll see. It's a lot of math. And that's why I don't think that the computers know it. It's too much, and there are too many variables. Does the computer know that the Dolphins stink when the weather's below 40 degrees? I don't think so. I do. That's why I'm here. That's why we're rocking and rolling. Okay, I'll have another episode out on Friday. I appreciate you tuning in. The podcast is called In the Jungle. My name is Matt Edwards. I appreciate you tuning in. We'll do it again on Friday. If you like the show, tell a friend about it. Give it a rating. Give it a subscription. Mark in the comments. I've been trying to reply to as many as I can. Some of them are really long, and I try to read them. But, brevity here. No, you can go really long. I do read them. It's just hard to reply to all that. My brain is not good, if you can't tell from listening to me for the last 28 minutes. So appreciate you tuning in. We'll do it on Friday. We will see you as the Bengals get ready to take on the Tennessee Titans.